It feels like the end of an era, doesn't it? The Italians have a phrase, siamo all'ultima spiaggia. And for 30 years they've been saying this, most theatrically about being on the last beach, but today, in one corner of Rome, it has never sounded more chillingly true. And that's not the Republic of Italy, but the Vatican City-State, a place now at risk of becoming the spiritual equivalent of the late Ottoman Empire, bloated, bankrupt, burdened by an almost terminal inability to reform itself. And where is the Ataturk poised to reinvent what is left? Since the Second Vatican Council of 1962 to 65, the Catholic Church has strained to redefine itself for a world that, frankly, has stopped waiting. Modernity has moved faster than the Curia ever could, and the result has been a colossal institutional pause, an institutional hardening of the arteries. Other churches face similar challenges, dwindling congregations, a loss of moral authority, but Catholicism's sheer magnitude, its sacramental centrality, its self-image as the one true church render its predicament uniquely perilous. The Orthodox churches, smaller and not committed to change. Anglicanism may shrink with a sad smile. Catholicism risks tearing itself apart with a clown's grimace. Consider the finances. The money has run out. Peter's pence, once the proud testament to global Catholic generosity, now barely props up the Vatican's deficit-riddled balance sheets. The museum and the post office turn a modest profit. Vatican radio hemorrhages it. Yeah, even the immense property portfolio, largely rented below market value to underpaid Vatican staff, can no longer be the magical goose. And so, like the Habsburg Empire at the end of the 19th century, the Church finds itself asset-rich but cash-poor, its sovereignty hollowed out by internal contradictions. Meanwhile, the Roman Curia, that ancient and mysterious organ of government, remains not so much reformed as embattled. Pope Francis saw the problem early. He spoke in 2014 of spiritual Alzheimer's affecting the Vatican's bureaucracy, and his attempt at reform, cancelling Christmas bonuses, installing Cardinal George Pell to overhaul finances, ended in ignominy. Pell faced obfuscation at every turn and was scandalously prosecuted in Australia and later absolved, while those implicated in Vatican corruption, like Cardinal Becciu, proved stubbornly entrenched. This internal resistance is not merely bureaucratic inertia, it's a fiefdom culture, a cacophony of independent authorities, the Secretariat of State, APSA, which manages assets, the Vatican Bank, the government, the governorate of the city-state, each jealously guarding its own patch. Little wonder that Libero Milione, the auditor from Deloitte's, was absurdly charged with espionage for attempting to do his job. The scandals have become almost operatic. Cardinal Becciu, convicted of embezzlement, saw his once cosseted assistant, Cecilia Marogna, La Dama del Cardinale, splurge church funds on Prada handbags and five-star hotels. What began as a financial reform agendum thus degenerated into a Byzantine soap opera, combining the bureaucratic capacity of Habsburg Vienna with the petty intrigues of a minor Renaissance court. And worse still is the crisis of moral authority. Francis's tendency to bypass standard government channels, standard control channels, personally appointing bishops and administrators without rigorous vetting, has produced a grotesque litany of failure. In Argentina, his personal picks for dioceses collapsed one after the other under clouds of scandal. In England and Chile, similar patterns emerged, bishops appointed only to resign in disgrace or amid protests. Cases such as Bishop Gustavo Zanchetta, convicted of sexual abuse, yet still a bishop. Father Marco Rupnik, accused of serial abuse of nuns, yet mysteriously shielded from justice. These reveal a church that still too often protects its own rather than the vulnerable. And the most damning question lingers, who is protecting these men and why? Pope Benedict XVI, frail though he was, at least grasped the depth of the rot. As Cardinal Ratzinger, he spoke of the need to cleanse the filth from the church. As Pope, he moved against Father Massio, founder of the Legionaries of Christ, with merciless swiftness. But Francis, despite his charisma and his often brilliant pastoral instincts, failed to back his reformers when it counted most. So the question looms, what of the next pope? And here lies the profound vulnerability of the Church. Catholicism, unlike other Christian traditions, remains heavily dependent on the personal charisma and the governing strength of the Pope. John the 23rd, John Paul II, these were leaders who could seize the wheel of history and who, at least briefly, could steer the bark of Peter towards renewal. But if the next pope is a mere functionary, a parallel perhaps, bloodlessly competent but fatally compromised by the failures of the Francis era, then the rot will continue unchecked. And the pool of candidates is shallow. Some cardinals govern dioceses scarcely larger than suburban parishes. Others are tainted by association with Rome's endless dramas. And the heavyweights of Milan, of Paris or New York are scandalously not even cardinals. And so we teeter towards a conclave with the sense that the men voting know neither what they want nor whom they trust. Now, the Church is not alone in its crisis. Every institutional form of Christianity today wrestles with secularism, cynicism, and the atomization of modern belief. But the Catholic Church, its immense size, its centralized structure, its doctrinal rigidity, render its paralysis uniquely tragic and uniquely dangerous. Now, no matter how much one may admire Pope Francis's charisma, his energy, his sanctity, the Vatican edges closer to a reckoning partly because of him. Financial, moral, and spiritual, and we can only pray that history's penchant for providential surprise doesn't desert us. Because the Catholic Church is not acting in a vacuum. The Catholic Church's leadership, the Catholic Church's survival, affects so much of Western Europe and so much of global inspiration. We don't need a politician, I think, nor an ideologue. We need a captain, a man who understands that administration is holiness in action, and that mere survival is not the Church's vocation. Otherwise, as the Italians would say, the tide is coming in, and the beach is not a safe place to be languishing. We need defences against the relentless sea.